Thank you and good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody here for the Sylvania City Council meeting of November 20th, 2023. My name is Mark Fry. I'm the president of council, and since the mayor was unable to make it this evening due to illness, as city charter requires, I am acting mayor for this evening. So we have a number of procedural things that we're going to need to go through because of that. And but prior to that, I wanted to ask the clerk to. I'd like to move this meeting to bring it to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Hanum?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Mr. McCann is excused.
Excused. Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Dow?
Here.
Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
6 members of City Council are in attendance this evening, so a quorum does exist. And I would ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led to this meeting by Ms. Stout.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There were a few additions to the agenda this evening. First up, I would like to add agenda item 3A, which is the election of a council president pro tem at 3A. We have some citizens here this evening that would like to address council regarding some concerns they have, I believe, on the pickleball courts. And we would make that, I would like to make that agenda item 4A. And then I would also like to add an executive session at the end of whatever number we end up. It's probably going to be 14A, but I'm not sure. Are there any other additions to the agenda from members of council?
Mr. Fry?
Yes, sir.
I attended the Woodstock Parade, our sister city, over the weekend, and would just like to give a brief update there.
Let's call that 13B, Mr. Hanson. Any other items to be added by members of council? Hearing none. Mr. Sanford.
Nothing, Mr. Fry.
Chief Miller.
Nothing, Mr. Fry.
Mr. Aller.
Nothing, Mr. Fry.
Mrs. Briney.
Nothing, Mr. Fry.
So hearing that, may I have a motion to approve the council agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Up to agenda item 3A, as acting mayor. Obviously, I can't be acting mayor and president of council at the same time. So I would entertain a motion to have a president pro tem of council this evening. Yes, Mr.
I
Haney.
move that Mary Westfall be designated president pro tem
We
today.
have a motion for Mrs. Westfall to become president pro tem for this evening. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of making Mrs. Westfall president of council pro tem this evening signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. And Madam President, since you are now the president of City Council for this evening, could you help us deal with the minutes for the council meeting number 6, please?
Absolutely. I move approval of the City of Sylvania Council meeting minutes for the meeting held November 6, 2023 as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the amended meeting minutes for November 6, 2023. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Agenda item 4A. We have some citizens here this evening that have some concerns. I know we've seen some emails about the pickleball courts, and I know that they have an attorney, Mrs. Beck, who's also in attendance this evening. She's been kind enough to pass out some information, which we appreciate, and it's been distributed by the clerk. So thank you very much. So I'm not sure who exactly wants to speak on this particular issue, but Ms. Beck, if you would kind of point us to who wants to speak first, and then
Yeah, thank you,
we'll move
Mr.
from
Fry.
there.
I just want to give you some information on what you've been handed. There is a scientific article that is prepared by some acoustic and sound engineers out of Arizona, because the pickleball problems and the noise associated with pickleball is not just a Sylvania problem. It is across the country. These courts are going in, and neighbors are getting angry, and lawsuits are occurring. There are quite a lot of neighbors who wish to speak, but I just wanted to give you a brief history. I know that some of these neighbors, particularly Mr. Rick Barraclaw, who could not be here tonight because he's traveling for the holiday, have been working at this for years, trying to get this changed. And the circumstances, we have been working with the Sage-Art board, and we're not trying to suggest that Sage-Art is acting in bad faith in any way, but I think that they're about at the end of what they're willing to do for this group. So what we're looking for you to do is to listen to them, to hear them, and then to take it into consideration to fix this problem, perhaps through legislation, where pickleball should not be and cannot be within 500 feet of residences. I don't think you'll have this problem continuing. If you read the information, everyone recommends at least 500 feet between a pickleball court and a residence. I think if you read that information, listen to these folks, and take it seriously, I think you'll find it appropriate that be the next step that is taken. My clients, I represent Ben and Amanda Milliron, who live at 5916 Main Street, which is that beautiful Victorian, that purple Victorian that's right there on Main Street. And they are more than competent to speak to their own issues that they're having with pickleball, and they have been having, and the effect that it has on their daily lives, as well as some of the other neighbors. So I'm going to ask the Millirons to speak first, and then there are some
Margaret, how
others.
far away are they from these pickleball courts? What's the
Their
distance?
property line's about 100 feet.
100 feet.
But, Ms.
Yes.
How far did you say it was away?
It's about 100 feet
Where to where?
from the pickleball courts to their property line.
To their property line, but not to the house,
It's
okay.
about 100.
To the house, it's about 150 feet.
150
Okay.
feet to the house. Yeah, and there are others, I believe, here who live even closer.
Sir, if you could identify yourself just for the record, where you live. We know where you reside, but for the record purposes.
My name is Benjamin Milliron. I live at 5916 Main Street. It's directly across the street from Main Street, across from the pickleball courts. I prepared some notes here. So I looked up just why is this noise such a bothersome issue, to myself, to my wife, to our neighbors. World Health Organization says that constant repetitive noise is a negative impact on health and safety. Indeed, we've had all this construction that's been going on around here in Lucas County, especially on the highway. It's an annoyance. And when you look at along the highway lines, what they do is they put these concrete embankments up, right? Put these big concrete walls. Why do they do that? It's noise abatement, right? And they do that in response to concerns for the health and safety and the repose of the individuals that live on the opposite side of those walls. Indeed, Sylvania has a noise ordinance that states, and I'll paraphrase here a little bit just for time, but no person or persons, whether actual persons or legal entities, shall make or cause to be made any loud noise which either annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, health, safety, repose of any reasonable persons of common sensibilities in the city of Sylvania. I fully consider myself to be a person of reasonable and common sensibility. Pickleball absolutely violates this. The noise is continued, it's loud, it's annoying, it disturbs us, it makes it difficult for us to be able to enjoy our property. And it's not just me, it's all of my neighbors, it's my wife, right? It's very frustrating. We've been dealing with it for a very long time. The noise from pickleball is not like a baseball or a football game, right? The noise that a ball makes when the ball strikes a paddle, it produces a very distinctive frequency, and there's some information in the literature that you were provided. It's the closest thing in approximation that you could generalize to. It's like a garbage truck when it backs up. That beep, 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 that's really annoying. Imagine that happening in front of your home for 16 hours a day. And then you couple that with when people get excited about this game. Pickleball is a social game, right? You can fit 2 courts in this room and people get very excited and they get very animated. And then they scream. So you have pop, 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 and then you have a bunch of people literally screaming in excitement over that. Imagine that from dawn until dusk. It's driving us nuts. I spoke with a colleague of mine he lives in California. He recently got into pickleball. And it was a good thing for him, right? He's not a very social guy. This enables him to do that. He's not a very active guy. It enables him to do that. It's a good thing. And I told him how close our home was to the courts. And he couldn't believe it. He actually had to look it up online. And we looked and we realized, and he said, that's insane. He said, that's just simply irresponsible that anyone would put those courts that close to a residence. I just couldn't believe it. There's a city in Colorado, I think Mr. Barrett will probably informed a lot of you folks about this, Centennial, Colorado. They're maybe a little bit ahead of us in this. They did noise studies. They went through concerns about a lawsuit. They hired acoustical consultants, some of whom provided that information that you have there. They passed an ordinance that was exactly what Ms. Beck requested, right? They said that no court will be permitted within 250 feet of a residence, and any court that is within 600 feet of a residence has to meet a noise abatement requirement that no more than 47 decibels will be permitted from the courts to enter into anyone's property. Our courts, I guarantee you, our courts violate that for a majority of the homes that are nearby. I've tried working with SageArt. I know Brian's here. They've been very receptive to us and run a lot of meetings. I think it's to the point now that we can't do anything more with SageArt. And I'm asking you to please help us, please help the citizens, please do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we go to the, please, come up. As we go to the next speaker, the only thing that I would ask is, we certainly want to hear your thought process and your thinking, but because we do have an agenda this evening, if you could not be repetitive, just speak your mind and keep it as short as we possibly can.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amanda Milliron, and I live at 5916 Main Street, located directly across from the pickleball courts. My husband and I purchased this home in the fall of 2019, and we quickly discovered from the historical and personal stories shared by the various members of the community that this house means a great deal to many in Sylvania. My husband have taken the restoration of this home very seriously. I believe anyone who has passed this home in the last couple of years has seen the transformation that we have undertaken, repainting, redone the driveway, added fences, planters, as well as planted over 100 new trees and countless numbers of perennials. The problem is I rarely get to sit outside and actually enjoy what we created because of the constant noise from the pickleball courts. It is just incessant. Since we moved in, it has become worse every year as it has gained a popularity. The hitting of the paddles is awful, but what is worse for me personally is the screaming from the players. Every time a shot is won or missed, someone is passionately yelling in victory or defeat. Multiply that by 6 for the number of courts, and it starts as early as 6:30 a.m. and goes well past dark, with some individuals lighting up the courts with their car lights. Excuse me. Yes, we have noise from traffic right outside of our home, but it is not really the same. There's a gentle fade of cars, but it is nothing compared to the jarring screams of random people. I hear this on my front porch, but I can also hear it in my home when my front door is open. I would love to have the freedom to open my windows, and most days I cannot unless I have my headphones on. I come home, I work from home, and my studio is located above the garage. I find myself not opening those windows as well because of this nuisance. I can also hear the noise on my screened-in back porch, which also starts every morning with someone from the rec department blowing off the courts with a gas-powered leaf blower. I genuinely have nothing against the people who are playing pickleball. It seems like a very fun sport, and I think it's wonderful that it encourages people of all ages to become more physically active. My issue is with the fact that the rec department did not do their research before they installed this court. Their intentions were good, but they very clearly made a mistake putting the court within 600 feet of a residential area. After complaints from the residents, it was pretty evident by the time we complained that they weren't really interested in doing anything to help with the situation. I believe they hoped we would just give up, and after many months of pleading and putting us off, they put up a small sign asking the players to be more considerate of residents. When that sign obviously did nothing, they stated that they weren't going to do anything more to help until we hired a lawyer. This encouraged them to add an acoustical panel to our side of the fence, but unfortunately, it has not helped much at all. I'm still hearing the pops and the screams. The court hours that they have listed are not only enforced by us and the other neighbors calling the police, which we have a record of. We believe that there are other less intrusive locations for the rec board to place the pickleball courts that will not be as disruptive as they are in their current location. So we're here today to ask you for your assistance to help us to please enforce the noise ordinance. We're going to continue to do what we can to restore this home in many ways. We see this as part of it. Please help us take care of this nuisance now for our sakes, for the sake of our neighbors, but also for future generations that live in this neighborhood, that will live in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens want to speak to this issue?
Okay, sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Nevers. I live on Woodrow Drive, probably about 100 feet or so from the courts, and I liken it to a barking dog, just all day. It's, when I moved in several years ago, it was great. Peaceful, quiet, crickets.
Mr. Nellers, which home do you live in? Could you give us the address, please?
5833 Woodrow Drive.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Nevers, Nevers.
Sorry, my
That's quite
apologies.
all right. It's quite all right. It's not very common, but. So anyway, it's just kind of like a barking dog. So we, from day one, when the Parks and Recreation put it in, we tried to stop it or talk to somebody. Every meeting we went to, brushed aside. Okay, next. Every meeting, they don't do anything. So I'm just very disappointed. I mean, I don't think anybody would like to have a barking dog right next to their house. So that's what I liken it to. It's very disturbing. So you guys, if you can help, be appreciated. You know, just, that's all I got. It's just bad.
Thank you.
I'll be concise.
Thank you.
My name's Carol Peak, and I live at 5830 Woodrow Drive. That's 3 houses down. I think it's within 150 feet or whatever. I have several issues. The first one is medical health care. The fact that this noise, like the beep, 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 that was so well done, that when you look at the constantness of it all, that there is a daycare within 70 feet of those pickleballs that you guys operate, apparently. And these are little children, and in the process of brain development that is impacting their health. And then you just even look at my street alone, when I hear that the residents are needing their antidepressants adjusted, they need their anxiety meds adjusted, they need their hypertensive meds adjusted, it's starting to say, okay, it's impacting our health. So I provided the Park Recreation Department with extensive research on how healthcare is affected by noise. And that was done last year, as Mike mentioned. We attended those meetings. The second one is the traffic. The traffic is horrendous because if you took the number of pickleball courts there are, and if you actually go and look in the cars, one person comes in each car. They don't drive together. They come one at a time. And when you do the simple math of taking how many courts there are and how many people are in the parking lot and how many times they're going up and down the street, that's 2,000 times more that those people are going back and forth on our street, which is the only way that they can exit. They won't let them exit on the other side where the street is actually bigger, because on our side you can only park on one side of the street. So I can't even get down the street to get to my home after work, or if I have to go to the bathroom real bad because I can't get down. The traffic is horrendous, and you couple that with the baseball field, it's totally terrible. And then the one that my husband would like to bring up is that we too built our house and developed it and made a lot of changes, and the price of our property is going down even though we made investments into that property. That noise even caused one of my neighbors to leave the street because they couldn't tolerate it all doggone day. It impacts the quality of our life, our daily living. As they mentioned, you can't even go outside. And lastly, what I would leave with you, it's a memorial park. A memorial, let's remember that. You've got another place where you could easily take this doggone thing and place it at the recreational site here in the city of Sylvania. Let's treat this as a memorial park and give honor to our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from citizenry?
Good evening, council. My name is Pete Diver, and I live at 5745 Phillips, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Rick Barraclough, if that's okay. Talked to Rick last night, wanted me to reiterate a few things. Seems like quite a consensus here about the situation over there, and he wanted me to make sure that a few points were added. Unfortunately, he suffers from anxiety from this pickleball court. Unfortunately, he's had to be medicated for it. He says the court is a lot like a Chinese water torture. It's repetitive, 16, 18 hours a day, repetitive sounds, whether it's the screaming or the sound of the pickleball. Very unhappy. He probably lives the closest of anybody to the pickleball court. But he just wanted me to make those few points, make sure they were understood.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from other citizens? Comments from members of council?
As the Sage Yard representative on behalf of City Council, it is wonderful to see all of you here. Thank you for taking the time to be here and to share your messages with us. The pickleball courts do fall under the responsibility of Sage Yard. And while you make many good comments, I don't think anybody ever put the pickleball courts there to upset the community citizens. I don't think the knowledge about the sound issues was around at the time when those pickleball courts were being considered. I do think that I'll keep my comments brief. While I'm sure that we may not be fully understanding all of the issues, we did recognize that there had been a conversation with some of the people who came to the Sage Yard meeting and another one in writing indicating that this group was prepared to take further action, which we perceived as an interest in moving to legal action. So we have been referring that to our attorney, and we felt like we should not be engaging in a deep dialogue. But I would encourage you to continue to share your perspectives. We're very open to continued dialogue, but we've also been as responsive as we feel we can be by putting up the acoustics. I mean, not that there's not more that could be done in further conversations, but the acoustic panels, we've limited the hours, we've put up the signage. I know it's clear to me that those aren't things that are making you happy, but upon your request, I think Sage Yard is trying to respond by doing every single action that's been requested. Until we got to the point where we were requested to close the courts. And I think there's always room for continued dialogue. So thank you for being here.
Briefly.
I do have to mention the hours. The hours were limited from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but those are not respected. My clients were told by Sage Yard to just call the police when the people were playing beyond 8 p.m. They have done that. I have a stack here of incident reports. Every time they have to call the police. The police at first came and told the mill irons, well, we were told by our command not to do anything about this. Later, then they would shoo them away, and then they would be back. The players would come back, because it's still light out. It's beautiful. People want to go play their game outside. This just isn't working. The 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is not respected. So I just wanted to give you that information.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for coming this evening. You're welcome to stay. We're going to work on the rest of the things on our agenda, and we certainly appreciate your input.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at the last meeting of council on November the 6th, we had a first reading of the 2024 budget proposed ordinance 88, 2023. My thought process on this, typically we do this in either 2 or 3 readings because it's the budget, as you recall. My thought process would be to only do a second reading unless members of council had some particular reason. I don't know that there's any rush necessarily to do this in the second reading. We could wait until the first meeting in December and still get everything put together so that we're up and ready to go by the 1st of January.
You know, Toby's not here, but Toby's good with that, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
You okay with that, members of administrative staff? Okay. So, Mrs. Westfall, if you could help us with proposed ordinance number 88, 2023.
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Fry. I'd like to introduce a second reading of ordinance number 88-2023. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll read by title only. To make appropriations for current expenditures and other expenditures of the city of Sylvania, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded to have a second reading only for proposed ordinance 88, 2023. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much for the second reading. Agenda item number 6 is proposed ordinance number 91, 2023, amending the codified ordinances. And for this one, I would turn to you, Mr. Hanem.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I'll move adoption of ordinance number.
Mr. Hanem, before we go further.
Yes.
I skipped one particular significant step. I know we've gone through the investment policy on a number of occasions. Mr. Schroyer is not here. If I might provide just a brief commentary for the record. Sure. So some months ago, we started reviewing the investment policy, came up with some changes, and in a finance committee meeting prior to the last meeting, we asked made some modifications to the proposed policy, which I believe the administrative staff came back with those, and that's what we have before us this evening. So my apologies for interrupting you, Mr. Hanem, so please proceed.
It's okay. I'll move adoption of ordinance number 91-2023. All members of council having received copies, in advance, I'll read by title only. Amending section 129.05 of the codified ordinances of the city of Sylvania in 1979, authorizing the adoption of the revised statement of investment policy consistent with section 129.05 of the codified ordinances. And I move adoption of ordinance number 91-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve proposed ordinance 91, 2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Aller, I believe this is your section of the agenda. We're moving on to the agenda item number 7, which is the Eldon Ditch Watershed Improvements Phase 1. So if you could kind of walk us through that, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Yes, the first phase of the watershed improvements is basically the detention system that was installed in Veterans Memorial Park. When we got into the pre-construction work and contractor and ourselves went to the site, we made some modifications based on what the contractor thought he was going to need for excavation area. One of the trees that was marked for removal was actually determined would be able to remain, but there were 2 other trees that would need to be removed, as well as a dead tree that, with the construction that was taking place, would not be left in a safe condition once the construction was done. The result of those changes of removing a tree and adding trees, the net result of that is $4,200 additional cost for the project. This was something, as I indicated, we reviewed in the field and recommend the approval. And this would take the contract to $298,072.19. And we do recommend approval, Mr. Fry.
Any questions for Mr. Aller on proposed ordinance?
No.
Mr.
change orders 92.
Yes, Mr. Aller, what is MH3? Is that a map code or something different?
M8,
It says an existing tree northwest of MH3 would need to be removed.
That third bullet point.
that should be, I believe that's MH3, it's manhole. I'm sorry, I thought you were saying MA.
Oh, no, okay.
Yeah, my
MH, yes,
apologies.
manhole,
Like
okay.
MA I don't know, but yeah, MH is manhole.
right,
Sorry
thank
about that.
Any other questions for Mr. Eller about proposed ordinance 92? Hearing none, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. This is ordinance number 92, 2023, which I will read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to approve change order number 1 to this city's agreement with Jim Palmer Excavating, Inc. for the Eldon Ditch Watershed Improvements Project Phase 1 to reflect the cost of tree removal modifications, increasing the contract amount by $4,200, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass ordinance number 92, 2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Balfour Water Line Improvements, number 8, Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. This project is one that has been kind of on our radar for a few years. And now that the interchange project is moving forward, this is a project that we want to have done in advance of that project. There's a section of, in the Balfour and Acres Road areas that we still have some 4-inch and 6-inch water lines in there. And we'd like to get those replaced with today's standard of 8-inch and 12-inch water lines. Once we're done with the project, each residence will have a new service connection. You can imagine with the construction, if you've been back in there, the streets back in there aren't in the best of condition. Once we get in there with construction, then it's going to be even worse. So we plan a mill and fill type project where we'll mill the top couple inches off and replace it with just a resurfacing. So make some spot repairs in that where necessary, but primarily just mill and fill. The estimated construction cost of the project is $999,140. We do have this programmed in. This will be a 2024 expense, but we'd like to get moving forward now with the advertising bidding phase so that we can make the award basically right after the first of the year.
Mr. Aller, 8 and 12, will that improve the water pressure availability for those citizens in that particular area because you're going to larger water lines?
Yeah, your day-to-day pressure, what they call static pressure will probably be about the same. But what will be much different is early morning pressure. When everybody is pulling off of that line, they'll now be pulling off of a 8-inch line. And when I say 4-inch, we actually made a repair on that water line. If you're ever around my office sometime, come in. That 4-inch is really about a 2-inch.
Sediment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's a very old line, as you can imagine, being 4-inch, and it has quite a bit of buildup in it. So.
Great, thank you. Any other question for Mr. Aller on the Balfour water improvements?
Mr. Eller, I just have a couple questions on impact to residents. Are they notified? And then also, does their water need to be shut off for an extended period of time?
Yeah, well, we do notify everybody along our projects. We give advance notice on timing that, try to tell them when the project is going to start. As we all know with construction, that can vary a little bit, but we give approximate dates. And then there will be short periods of when the water has to be shut off, but really it's just when we disconnect them from the old line and reconnect them to the other line. Should be the only. We have one other valve that could potentially cause a 2-hour shutdown, but those are all notified in advance when that has to take place. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Aller? Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I would like to introduce by title only ordinance number 93-2023. Authorizing.
This is just to advertise for
Oh,
bids.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the next page here. Thank you.
Gonna steal Ms. Stowe's thunder.
I sure am. Went right to the next page. Thank you, Mr. Fry. I would like to make a motion to advertise for bids for the Balfour Road Waterline Improvement Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to allow the service director and the administrative staff to advertise for bids for the Balfour Road Waterline improvements. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have proposed ordinance number 93, 2023. And this is regarding the police chief entering into a memorandum of understanding with Lucas County Children's Services. So, Chief, I don't know if this is you or Mrs. Brining or who's on this one.
I can start. And
Mrs.
Danny
Brining,
can-
you're closest
Danny
to me.
Yeah, that's right,
Go for
that's
it.
right. The chief can fill in the detail. This is just memorializing the process that has been in place since at least 2010. That was the last time that the memorandum of understanding was signed by all of the county partners. The state legislature just got revised the sections requiring everybody to review this more than once every 13 or 15 years. So every 2 years, this will be coming back to you for approval and consideration. I'll let the chief speak to the specifics that are, but there's no change to the process of how we handle these claims and reports or anything. This is just an update and confirmation of how we are currently handling these cases.
It memorialized what the state law requires us to do as law enforcement officers and to work with our children's services bureaus. Like Leslie said, it's something that hasn't been updated. The last copy I found was from 2010. A lot of laws have changed. As the laws have changed, we've changed our procedures with them to be in compliance, and this is just some housekeeping to make sure the MOUs are kept up to date.
Right. So is this, is 2 years, is that required by state law, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, is that
That's-
enough time? Should we do it every year to make sure that we don't miss something, or?
This is what's required by the state law, that we do this every 2 years. We are notified when there are legal changes as far as how we handle things, and we would update our internal procedures and
Right.
policies to keep us in compliance until this would be reviewed.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Mrs. Brining or Chief Miller regarding ordinance number 93? Hearing none, Ms. Stowe, if you could do ordinance number 93, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I would like to introduce ordinance number 93-2023 and read by title only. Authorizing the Chief of Police of the City of Sylvania, Ohio, to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Lucas County Children's Services and community partners to address child abuse and neglect cases. I move for passage of ordinance number 93-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of ordinance number 93, 2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. And ordinance number 93, 2023 is adopted as an emergency measure. At this point in the agenda, we've come up to council appointments. As you recall, council appoints a number of individuals for various boards. And at this particular time, and it always comes up at the end of every year, these are 3 particular appointments. One is for Mrs. Westfall, one is for Mr. Keyser, another one for Mr. Royer, and another from Mr. Risher for zoning board for the last 2, and Sajard for the first 2. So, Mrs. Westfall, this is your committee. I know that we've got a standardized structure every couple times through. We advertise, these are not in that cycle. This is the first time through?
Correct. Well, I think as you'll see, certainly the appointment from the city council seat, the city council representative Sajard, that's an annual appointment.
Right.
And so that's a decision of the council. Certainly a recommendation from the committee and the council. And then Mr. Keyser, who's here today with us, he is currently president of the Sajard board, and in such capacity, he is allowed to continue on. He doesn't go through that cycle of reappointment, if there's somebody who's serving in an officer seat. For the other two candidates, this would be their second appointment, and their first, they served once, and now they're getting a reappointment. And they've been notified at the next time that they certainly can reapply, but we would be opening it up.
Thank you very much for that explanation, and for the record, I'd like to thank both of you for your willingness to continue to serve in these capacities, and also to thank the two individuals, Mr. Royer and Mr. Risher, to continue to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals as well. So we appreciate your ongoing dedication to our community, certainly. Mrs. Westfall requested that she not be reading her own resolution into the record for herself to be appointed. So with that, I would, Mr. Hanson, if you could read resolution number 16, 2023, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I would like to introduce by title only, resolution number 16-2023, reappointing Mary Westfall to the Board of Trustees of Sylvania Area Joint Recreation District, Sage Yard. She being a member of the council of this appointing political subdivision for the full calendar year of 2024. I move for passage of resolution number 16-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 16, 2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Westfall, you have another year on Sage Yard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And since you're up next for resolution number 17 for reappointing Mr. Keiser to the Board of Trustees, and Brian, we thank you very much for your willingness to continue to serve and to be president of Sage Yard. So it's a lot of extra work beyond just being a board member, and we all recognize that. So thank you very much for that. Mrs. Westfall.
Mr. Fry, I did have the honor of talking to Brian a little bit about what he's been doing in the community and how he became interested in serving on Sage Yard. And if you'd be open to it, I'd like him to be able to share a little bit about himself since he's here.
Absolutely.
Would you feel comfortable with
Might
that?
be shorter for him to,
I can share with
it might be shorter for him to tell us what community group he's not a member of. That would be a shorter list. So
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Well, then I will tell you, he was born
he
and
does
raised here.
yeoman's work for the city, on behalf of us and the other citizens, and we recognize and
But I will
applaud
share a
that.
little bit because it was impressive, and I didn't know all of these wonderful things that Brian's been involved with. So he was born and raised here in Sylvania. He went to Sylvania, McCord, and Southview. He went to Ohio State for school and then came back. He's third-generation owner of Sylvania Steel Corporation, a company that his grandfather started in 1964. He has two boys, both currently at Arbor Hill, 6th and 8th grade. And in addition to the Sage Yard Board, he is the treasurer of Redbird Sylvania. He's on the board of the director of Sylvania Arts and previously served for 9 years on the board of directors of Sylvania Area Chamber of Commerce. So we are fortunate to have his involvement in the community, and Sage Yard's lucky to have him at the head of the table. With that, I would like to introduce resolution number 17-2023. All members of council having received in advance, I will read by title only. Reappointing Brian Keiser to the Board of Trustees of Sylvania Area Joint Recreation District for a term expiring December 31st, 2026. I move final passage of resolution number 17-2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 17, 2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. And your service to the community will continue. Thank you very much, Mr. Keiser. Next up is resolution number
You're
8.
stuck now, Brian.
Next up is resolution number 18, 2023 for reappointment of Mr. Royer to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Hayden. I'm good.
You can have,
Mary, you want to talk about?
I just want to tell you a little bit
Oh,
about it,
please,
if you don't mind.
absolutely. No, that's great.
Yeah, I did have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Royer, and he is completing his first time. He is, of course, interested in being reappointed. He's lived in Sylvania for 11 years with his wife and 3 children who are 14, 13, 11, and are currently in Sylvania schools. He originally became interested in the BZA because he wanted to be able to have chickens. He lived in Perrysburg, and he was allowed to have chickens in his yard.
Oh.
And so he realizes now that that will not happen. But he feels that he has made a significant difference by getting involved in ensuring that the unload code of regulations and ordinances are up to date at all times. He feels this is critical because he refers to the code during BZA meetings. and he works for Libby Glass as an IT manager.
Thank you for the information, and we certainly appreciate Mr. Royer's continued service for the city. Mr. Hanem.
Yeah, you know, we're blessed as a city to have some really great people who step up and volunteer to serve. And as soon as I'm going to read this, I'll take the floor to just thank all of them and let them know we appreciate their commitment to our city and to our quality of life. Anyway, so I will move adoption of resolution number 18-2023, and I will read by title only, reappointing Danny Royer to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring December 31, 2026. And I move adoption of resolution number 18-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 18-2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. Mrs. Westfall, Mr. Risher, do you,
I'll do a little intro.
please?
So Steve Risher is completing his first time, and he is, of course, interested in being reappointed. He is a retired Sylvania firefighter, having served 29 and a half years, 26 years were full-time. He graduated from Sylvania High School in 1960. He graduated from the University of Toledo with a BA in journalism, which I don't know how many of you know Steve, but that was a big surprise to me. He's a great guy. I didn't think of him as a big writer, but I've never read his writing, so. He was a high school basketball official for 40 years, and he is a triathlete competitor.
40 years.
40 years.
Got to have thick skin to be a basketball
Have
official for
thick
40
skin.
years, I just got to say.
Yeah.
Or not care.
We're that. We're that, no doubt.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I understand. I get it. So, Mr. Hanem, if you could help us with Resolution 19-2023.
Absolutely. I move adoption of resolution number 19-2023, and I will read by title only. Reappointing Stephen Risher to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring December 31, 2026. And I move adoption of resolution number 19-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Motion and a second for adoption of Resolution 19-2023 as an emergency measure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. Now on to agenda item number 11. What this is my understanding, it's a transfer of a liquor control permit. Is that correct, Chief? Any reason why we should request a hearing for this?
No, in fact, I believe this is just the Division of Liquor Control catching up with their paperwork because this business that it was transferred over to is actually closed. So we're probably gonna be seeing another transfer come up shortly as My Way Cantina, is my understanding, is taking back the business.
Oh, they are. So Steve's taking it back.
Backstage closed and supposedly it's reopening again as My Way Cantina.
Oh, okay.
So this is the liquor permit that would have been transferred by them to Stratosphere when they were opening Backstage, and the paperwork is just now finally catching up.
Okay. So no concerns.
No concern.
So Ms. Stow, if you could help us with this as a member of the Safety Committee, that would be great.
Sure. I've never done one of these, but I'm going to say we do not request a hearing for the transfer of a D5, D6 liquor license. Is anything else needed for that?
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Motion to not ask for a hearing for the transfer of a D5, D6 liquor permit from Stratosphere, or from My Way Cantina to Stratosphere. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. Next up is to set the time for the organizational meeting. As you all know, last couple weeks ago, we had an election, and we have 4 new members of council that will be sworn in. So we have to have another organizational meeting as is required by city charter. And I'd make a motion to set the organizational meeting immediately prior to our council meeting on the 2nd of January 2024 at 7:15 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to set the organizational meeting for council on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024 at 7:15 PM. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Up to committee reports. Mr. Hainum, Zoning and Annexation Committee meeting held this evening. If you could give us a summary.
Certainly, Mr. Fry. The Annexation Zoning Committee meeting commenced at 6:52 because the chair was late. And the purpose of the meeting was to review the procedure on issuing event permits under Municipal Code Section 3111.02. Present were eventually the chair got there, and Mr. Hanson, Mr. Stout, Mayor Westfall. The members of the committee also present were President of Council Mark Fry and Patrick Richardson, Kevin Aller, Leslie Brining, Chief Miller, and Bill Sanford. During the course of the meeting, there was a discussion of Municipal Code Section 311.02 and the permit procedure for parades and assemblies and block parties. And we discussed, it was clearly there was no proposal on the table. We discussed options to better inform the public of consideration of permit applications and events. After the discussion, the wisdom of the committee was to request the administration to report to council on or before the second meeting in January on suggested modifications, if any, to section 311.2. And with that, committee adjourned at 7:25 PM.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Hainum. Any questions for Mr. Hainum? Appreciate that. We'll look forward to seeing that recommendation from the administrative staff on those potential modifications. Mr. Hanson, you'd asked, had the opportunity to travel up to our sister city for their parade and festivities over the weekend. If you could give us a brief report, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Fry. Yes, just wanted to give everyone kind of a summary. From Woodstock, the mayor, Jerry Accioni, was present. They have 6 city council members that they call councilors, and 2 of them attended as well, Mark Shadenberg and Bernia Martin. From Sylvania, we had Dan Marcelic and his wife Lisa, Dave Shear, his wife Jan, the town crier Mike Lever and Roz, and then a couple other members of Sylvania Sister City Commission, as well as some Sister City members from Woodstock. We started, I only went Saturday. They did a tree lighting, I believe, Friday night. I wasn't present for that. But we did a team building exercise Saturday afternoon, which was an escape room. We had a 45-minute time limit and got out in about 40, so we were happy with that. Then the parade, it was much longer than ours. Population there was about 46,000. The parade was, I would estimate, about 3 miles long. It ran for over an hour. It was somewhere between an hour and 15 minutes. They have flatbed trailers that bring these huge floats in, just several different organizations that participate, and is really kind of a competition. They have judges that judge the floats. So, just a lot of work, very impressive with what I saw, not just in the parade itself, but the amount of participation from the community. And then we just had a nice dinner afterwards, and, the Woodstock mayor was very welcoming, made a point to say everybody from Sylvania is welcome at any time, so overall, just a very, very nice event.
Thank you. Sounds like it was a wonderful time.
Yes.
You know,
And, and great weather.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, a little cold, but yeah,
Yeah.
no rain or anything like that.
Right.
Marcus, thank you so much for going. I think it's so important to have representatives there, and I've had the pleasure of going up several times. And it's always fun, they're very welcoming, but the parade is always cold. I mean, you can't get dressed warm enough. It's dark,
Yeah.
and it's winter in Canada, and so thank you for being there, and it's always really helpful to have a presence there, so thanks.
Thank you.
Take your mittens, is what you're saying?
Yeah, no, take everything, like blankets, coats, hats, gloves, I mean, it's cold.
Yeah.
Because you're on the, the flatbeds and stuff, and you're
Right.
just in the cold. No getting away from it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much for that report, and we want to thank obviously, you, Mr. Hanson, but also the members of Sister Cities for continuing to work with our sister city in Woodstock, Ontario, and keeping that important relationship alive for our citizens and for the citizens of Woodstock. So thank you. With that, is there anything to come before the agenda for the consideration of an executive session? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of potential disposition of property.
Yep, we need to do the roll call.
I understand.
Yep.
And will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanem?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Dow?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
So with that, we'll enter into executive session and No decisions were made in executive session. At this time, we don't have any further business to come before council regarding the executive session. Are there any other items to come before council before we consider adjournment? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All members of council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.